Hello, my name is Steve Clark. I'm the Deputy Associate Administrator for the Aeronautics Research Mission Directorate at NASA headquarters, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm going to talk to you about the Artemis program, which is our return to the moon. What is Artemis? Well, the name in of itself is the twin sister of Apollo and goddess of the moon in Greek mythology. And now she personifies our path to the moon as the name of NASA's program to return astronauts to the lunar surface. And this time we're going to return to a place where no human has ever been before, the moon's south pole. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides. Now, the ultimate goal is to send humans to Mars. And Artemis begins this journey with the next era of long-term exploration of the moon.
And as we leave the moon, we leave as we came, and God willing, as we shall return.
You probably dreamed of this.
Liftoff on Apollo 11.
You probably replayed this moment 1,000 times. You probably imagined the awe-inspiring, indescribable rush of the ride. You probably celebrated the miraculous, cheered the momentous, and mourned the shocking. You probably still dream of what could be. We did. We do. And while many thought we were through, no. We've been learning, we've been building, we've been training. And now, it's time. Because the next frontier is not just for the next generation. It's for this generation. It's for me, and it's for you. For everything we still dream about. We go as Artemis.
And what is Artemis? Here you see all of the various development and planning activities that make up Artemis, which is a foundation for deep space exploration. You see the brand new launch vehicle called Space Launch System in the top left, the Orion spacecraft, which will take our crews to the moon, the human landing system that will take the crew from lunar orbit down to the surface of the moon and return them back up to lunar orbit to rendezvous with Orion and return home. Surface operations planning is undergoing right now. The Gateway is going to be an orbiting platform that I'll talk about here in a few minutes. The Exploration Ground Systems is at the Kennedy Space Center. This is where all of the flight components come together and where we will launch the SLS and Orion. Space Communications and Navigation, which I'm sure is very near and dear to everyone's heart here, is a key component of our return to the moon. Surface mobility is going to be key to expand our exploration distances once we return to the surface of the moon. New spacesuits are being developed. And then we want to establish the Artemis base camp on the lunar surface. So here's what we call the swoosh chart. And this is the steps that will be taken to return humans to the moon. You see in the top left corner the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. This spacecraft has been orbiting the moon for over 10 years now. And it continues to provide us valuable data of the lunar surface. And it will continue to do so as we fine-tune the exact landing location where we want to send our astronauts. Now, Artemis 1 will be the first human spacecraft to the moon in the 21st century. And I'll talk a little bit more about Artemis 1, 2, and 3 in later slides. But I want to draw your attention to the lunar surface because we're going to begin the exploration of the moon with commercial landers on the moon. And that's what you see there are notional commercial landers that are going to take science instruments and other payloads to the surface. NASA is one of many customers that will be basically buying a ride with our science instruments to the lunar surface. And then the Volatiles Investigating Polar Exploration Rover, or VIPER, is a rover that NASA is developing to send to the South Pole to look for water in permanently shadowed regions in the South Pole. And as you move to the right, you'll see humans on the moon in the 21st century with the human landing system. And Mars is in the upper right corner. As I mentioned, Mars is our horizon goal. We're going to use the moon as a training location to test out new systems before we take the long journey to Mars with humans. As we continue to progress and add to our flights and our experience on the lunar surface, we're going to start building what we call a base camp. And that will include more hardware, more systems, more exploration systems for our both humans and robots to use when they're on the surface of the moon. As you can see down on the surface, the Lunar Terrain Vehicle on the left side, the Pressurized Rover a little bit to the right of center, fission surface power, in situ resource utilization, pilot plants, surface habitats, all of these are in the planning stages now. And we will continue to send these components to the lunar surface and build up this base camp for a sustained presence on the lunar surface by humans. So let's talk about Artemis 1. This will be the first flight of the Space Launch System and of the Orion space capsule. It will be uncrewed. It will demonstrate Orion's heat shield at lunar reentry conditions, which is a much faster velocity coming into the Earth's atmosphere than from Earth orbit. It will operate systems in the flight environment of leaving Earth's gravitational pull, going to the moon, coming back to the Earth. And we'll also test out the retrieval systems to retrieve the Orion spacecraft for its water landings. This will be in preparation for the first crewed mission, which this leads to Artemis 2, which will be the first crewed mission. Now, the crew will not land on the moon on Artemis 2. This will be a crewed checkout mission using SLS and the Orion spacecraft. There are various mission designs that are being considered now. The leading one is to do a figure 8 around the moon, similar to what Apollo 8 did. And this will conduct various tests for the crew from a health standpoint. It'll validate the life support systems of the Orion spacecraft. It will also provide a good checkout of all of the systems of the Orion spacecraft with humans on board. And then we get to Artemis 3, which will be the first crewed landing. The plan is to live in the human landing system cabin for 6.5 days on the lunar surface and conduct up to 4 moonwalks. Now, what will they do on the surface? Well, they'll deploy instruments which will gather scientific data and transmit this data back to Earth. The astronauts will collect a variety of samples to return Earth for later research. We still have rocks and soil from the Apollo missions that have yet to be examined. These will be brand new samples from a different location from anywhere any of the Apollo missions landed. Now, I talked about Gateway earlier. This is a science platform that's going to help establish a sustained human presence on and around the moon in this decade. It's going to provide a way station for vehicles in cislunar space with access to the lunar surface. It will include living quarters for astronauts. It will have various platforms for science, instruments that can be attached to the outside of the space gateway, and also inside the living quarters. So this platform will be used for scientific research even when crews are not there. The intent is not to have crews at the gateway all of the time. It will be a way station. When the crew is not there, Gateway will operate autonomously. Foundational elements of Gateway are the power and propulsion element on the lower left. Maxar is building this for NASA. The habitation and logistics outpost, which is being built by Northrop Grumman. This will be used by crews that go to Gateway. As I mentioned, it's going to be a way station. So Orion will dock at the Gateway. The crew will transfer into this habitation and logistics outpost. And then when the time is right, crew will get on board the human landing system, depart from the Gateway, land on the lunar surface, and then upon their return, dock with the Gateway, transfer into the logistics outpost, and then eventually to the Orion spacecraft to return home. We've also awarded Gateway logistics services to SpaceX, which will deliver cargo, experiments, and various supplies to the Gateway in lunar orbit. These will be multiple supply missions, similar to what we're doing today with resupplying the International Space Station. The Gateway is going to be built by international partners, similar to what we've done with the International Space Station. We have developed long-term relationships with our international partners to build the International Space Station. We are going to leverage those partnerships to build the Gateway platform. We know how to work together. We're going to use those strengths of the various international partners to build Gateway. Now we're developing new suits for the lunar surface. These are what we call the next generation of moonwalking suits. They will not be similar to the Apollo suits. Technology has matured greatly since the 1970s, and there will be a whole new suite of spacesuits and support systems to enable exploration, particularly at the lunar South Pole. These improvements include advanced safety additions, more flexibility for the crew that are inside these suits, better communications, and custom fitting. So what will we do on the moon? Well, we are going to train for our eventual human mission to Mars, as I mentioned earlier. But there are so many different things that we can be doing on the moon as well. We can conduct science experiments. We can prospect for resources. We want to be able to gather samples and bring them back to Earth for scientists to examine. We want to develop surface power technology, both solar and fission power. We want to be able to operate autonomously on another world, even with the communications delays that we know that we'll have on the moon. The delays will be much longer at Mars, so we're going to learn how to operate on the moon autonomously when we can't be in constant contact with Earth. We're going to establish deep space logistics supply chains. As I mentioned, SpaceX will be delivering logistics supplies to the Gateway. Well, we want to be able to also deliver logistics, supplies, experiments to the surface of the moon as well. We'll establish these deep space logistics supply chains and then build on that for our human missions to Mars. Now, one thing I do get asked is, why do we need to send humans back when we can just send robots? Robots cannot replace human curiosity. The most advanced robots can't replace human understanding and the emotion behind new discoveries. Humans are intuitive. They can make rapid decisions as they are on the surface of the moon. When they find new things or find something surprising, they can investigate. And they can do it real time. They don't have to wait for a software update or a reprogramming beamed from Earth to a robot on the surface of the moon. And you can see Jack Schmitt there on the lower left from Apollo 17. I think if you could talk with him, he would tell you the same thing. You can't replace humans with robots. Now, I mentioned earlier about some of the hardware that we want to develop and put on the lunar surface to expand our exploration areas. And the first thing we're looking at is a lunar terrain vehicle. And this would be an unpressurized rover, similar to what we flew on Apollo 15, 16, and 17. This will allow crews in spacesuits to drive to expanded areas to explore beyond just the walking distance of our crews that would be on the lunar surface. But we're also looking at concepts for pressurized rovers, which will even further our exploration distances. And here you can see some concept vehicles. The upper right, that's an actual vehicle that has been built and tested in various terrains on Earth. You can see in the middle a JAXA concept of a pressurized rover. And of course there on the bottom another concept. So we are looking at pressurized rovers. And what do I mean by pressurized? Well, crews can get on board and they can have an environment where they do not have to be in spacesuits. They can operate in an oxygen, nitrogen environment in basically shirt sleeves. So I mentioned, what are we going to do on the surface of the moon? And I talked about conducting science. Well, these are some of the science objectives that scientists have developed for planning for human exploration on the lunar surface. One of the key research areas is water on the moon. And you can see in the background there those blue areas. Those blue areas are actual data taken from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter and other missions that seem to detect water in the permanently shadowed regions of craters. And so this is why we want to go to the South Pole, because many of the data indicate those permanently shadowed regions have a large amount of trapped water ice. So we want to go investigate those deposits and determine how much of it is there and how easy or difficult it will be to excavate. The potential to be able to utilize this water ice on the surface of the moon for drinking water, for hydrogen and oxygen, for the oxygen for breathing, but also hydrogen and oxygen together makes rocket fuel, which means we could potentially refuel our human landing systems on the surface of the moon. This is all in situ resource utilization. And this is something we want to do on the surface of the moon and learn from this so that we can then use those lessons when we go to Mars. Now, I mentioned on that swoosh chart the commercial robotic landers, and I just want to spend a minute describing a little bit more about this. This is an exciting, innovative approach that NASA has taken with commercial partners to deliver payloads to the surface of the moon, with NASA buying a ride. There are currently 14 commercial lunar payload services contractors that NASA can use to buy a ride. NASA solicits bids from these contractors and awards contracts to deliver the instruments and other payloads to the surface. NASA has already awarded 6 different CLPS contracts that will deliver a total of 29 payloads, beginning with 3 landers next year in 2022. And NASA is also soliciting payloads and subsequent landers to go to the lunar surface to characterize the moon's surface and enable future human and robotic exploration. So this is very exciting for the commercial companies and for NASA. Now, I've talked a little bit about international partnerships, and there are other spacefaring nations, as we know. And so NASA set out to develop a framework with principles for safe, peaceful, and prosperous space exploration. And these are called the Artemis Accords. And I won't read through all of these, but these are the tenets for the Artemis Accords. The whole purpose is for all of us to be able to explore space safely and peacefully, and to be able to share the vast amounts of scientific data that we're going to acquire in this exploration, a new era of exploration. 12 countries, including the United States, have signed these accords. And you can see the countries here on the right: Australia, Brazil, Canada, Italy, Japan, Luxembourg, New Zealand, Republic of Korea, United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, Ukraine, and the US. And we are in discussions with additional countries as well. So I mentioned earlier space communications and navigation, so I did want to touch on that. The network that we have in place today is critical to this new era of the lunar surface exploration. So the space network will play a vital role in the Artemis launch support, from launch at the Kennedy Space Center through separation. And the Near Earth network will support Artemis's Orion spacecraft and the Space Launch System through the phases of flight. And then the Deep Space Network will come into play. It'll provide continuous high-rate command and telemetry to NASA's Gateway, as I mentioned earlier, the Human Landing System, and other Artemis space systems that are developed in the future. The Human Spaceflight Network integration combines the capabilities of all of NASA's networks into a comprehensive communication services for the human exploration at the moon. And then, of course, the Spectrum Management Office will continue to protect and advocate for NASA's radio frequency use, helping to eliminate any transmission interference for Artemis missions. I want to take a moment to talk about how students can get involved in the Artemis program. Students can apply for NASA internships or fellowships at intern.nasa.gov. They can also discover Artemis student challenges and explore how they can get involved in mission-related challenges at stem.nasa.gov/Artemis. And for colleges, universities, and technical and vocational institutions, there's a host of information for STEM resources on go.nasa.gov/higher-ed. And of course, there are a number of social media platforms where students can follow NASA and find out how they can get involved and work with NASA. And with that, I look forward to your questions. Thank you.